which is, let's see. Okay, we are live. Okay, well, hey, good evening, everybody. This is Patrick Millikin from the Poison Pen Bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona, and it is a real treat to have my friend David Swinson with me today. He's going to be talking about his wonderful new book, Sweet Thing. And we were just, David and I, every time we chat, we always kind of nerd out on music, and what you're listening to and the soundtrack and all this. And we were just talking about, and then I promise folks we'll get into the book quickly, but we're talking about this great band called the Dream Syndicate. And you were just saying how you booked them early on in Los
Yeah, in
Angeles.
the 80s. I don't even remember what year. At Bogart's a nightclub in Long Beach, California. But yeah, they were like that album that we were talking about, Days of Wine and Roses, is
Right.
one of my all-time favorite albums.
And then we were discussing 45 Grave before we went
Mhm.
on here, and there is a link there because Paul Cutler, the really wonderful musician, guitar player from that band, played in Dream Syndicate for a few of their records later. So
Mhm.
anyway, the only reason I bring this stuff up, folks, is because as kind of a segue into our talk here today, David for many years was a concert promoter and a booker for several really, legendary venues in Los Angeles, right? I mean, Fender's, Ballroom, and
Mhm.
Bogart's. Um, I don't know, maybe just say a few words about that, David, and then we'll transition into the police career, the law enforcement career.
It was actually Long Beach, California. But it started when I got out of college with a degree in film, and I really thought that I'd be a screenwriter. Um, and as it usually happens, when you meet a girl, things changed. And this girl got me into the whole alternative punk rock scene. And a couple of years later, we opened a record store in Seal Beach, California on Main Street. And there was like Zed Records, which was the premier alternative punk rock record store, like in Long Beach, and then Slug Records, which was my record store, and we ended up having hosting autograph sessions and stuff with bands, and would have kids back then had nowhere to go, for music or anything, like concerts or anything. I mean, there was Orange County and then Los Angeles, and Long Beach was pretty much in the, nowhere zone for that. And the lines were so long that the city, all these kids with mohawks and goth and, everything, and the city of Seal Beach, very conservative city, just really didn't like that.
I
And we
bet.
didn't last, we lasted a couple of years. But in the time I had made connections, and I had found a place called Fender's Ballroom that holds about 1,500 people, and had enough money saved up that I could afford to get a first band, which happened to be the Violent Femmes,
Mm.
and but had no advertising budget. And I didn't tell them that, but I ended up, and this was before the guy we were talking about, Victor Gaislam. I ended up, who did my flyers. Um, I ended up getting like 1,500 flyers printed and did some guerrilla marketing, and it more than sold out. It oversold, and it was a sweat box, and it was like incredible. Yeah. And so it all started from there, and one show after another. And then I, discovered Bogart's, which was a meat market, dance club. And I talked to them to let me have just Sunday night, and they gave me a Sunday night, and that Sunday night did better than their Friday, Saturday. So it wasn't long before I got, 7 nights a week. And and then I worked there full time, and didn't do anything at Fenders anymore,
Hmm.
or Melody Dance Center. And then just ended up getting a budget and having like an ad in Los Angeles Times and LA Weekly and Orange County Register. And it was just, hugely successful.
Wow. Now, were places like the Cuckoo's Nest going on at this same time?
Yeah, Cuckoo's Nest really wasn't around at the time of Bogart. They had closed down at the time of Bogart's. There was obviously the the whiskey, the Roxy, the Club Lingerie, Coconut Teaser, Orange County.
Because you're getting into the metal years now, right? The hair metal starting to come
Oh
in.
my gosh, yeah. The book Guns N' Roses, yeah. But Orange County is just escaping me. There were a couple incredible clubs there, and it's just escaping me. And Cuckoo's Nest was in Orange County. And I just don't remember the names of the
Santa
clubs.
Monica Civic would have bigger shows,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
sometimes those bands would want to do something else, and but they would not let you advertise, but you could do word of mouth.
Mm,
Like some of the bigger bands. And again, you're testing my brain here because it'll come to me during the course of our conversation, but I'm not remembering it right now.
right, right.
But I had a
Um,
lot of good bands like that.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know, we're going to get to the books and the second, well, third or fourth act of your career, really. Uh, and then you left Los Angeles and went to DC. When would this have been, in the early 90s or late 80s?
And yeah, I ended up finally getting a film made that I developed and then co-produced, um and then getting the rights to a couple of really good books like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And then it just left a real bad taste in my mouth. And I had always, believe it or not, I always wanted to be a cop, and I got to the point where I wanted a retirement. I wanted insurance. I had insurance, but it cost up, the wazoo for it. And I wanted to be a writer. And at that time I was reading Lambaugh and stuff like that. And so I thought it'd be cool to be a cop and, learn about crime and, be a detective, hopefully become a detective, and then and continue to write. And so in 93 is when I got real serious about it and quit smoking and started running and doing sit-ups and push-ups. And then I didn't apply anywhere else except Washington, D.C., because I was home base and I went to high school there and I was raised there and between countries. And believe it or not, despite my background in punk rock and alternative music, they accepted me. And, you know,
So you went to the academy,
in 1994, October of 94,
and so you would have been older than the average
I was
cadet, right? I mean, you would have been what,
yeah,
in your early 30s or late 20s?
early 30s and
Wow.
very early 30s. And but I'm a beyond, and I'm giving myself some accolades here. I kicked most of their asses, as far as like physical, a lot of those guys, and some of them like could outrun me, obviously, and all that. But I was an incredible runner, you know, and I could I could drop and do 150 push-ups and 300 crunches and all that. But you know, so at my age, there were guys in their mid-20s that, I was right up there with, and it sort of pissed them off. But they're friends for life right now. I mean, they're still my friends.
Yeah, right. And so tell us a little bit about your career. You started off, I'm sure, paying your dues, doing as a patrol cop officer in
Yeah.
uniform for a while. And then I mean, ultimately you worked homicide, correct?
Actually,
You worked,
that's a weird story. I ended up getting into major crimes and assisted with a lot of high-profile homicides. When I was given my detective badge by then Chief Ramsey, who personally gave it to all of us after our class, and he would give out the assignments. I was really good at what I did, and he knew I wanted to stay at doing what I was doing as an investigator, and he jokingly said, "Swinson, homicide." And I go, "Oh," my face dropped, and I'm going, most people want to be in a homicide, but I didn't. And I go, "Yes, sir." And I start walking back to the seat, and then he goes, Swinson, just kidding. SID, Special Investigations Division. And I go, thank you, sir. So I had my share of like homicide investigations, but nothing like what those homicide guys go through, man. They're war dogs.
Right. Well, as a way of kind of getting into the book, and there's so much to talk about in this book. Just briefly, most of the people that are watching will be familiar with the trilogy with Frank Marr, and which Frank has a small role in this book. It's kind of obviously this is set in kind of late 1999. It's right before the turn of the century, obviously, but when I was reading this book, it struck me so much that I can't think of another 20-year period in time that seems like a different world. And it's the acceleration of things, especially technology and its impact. Man, I'm reading this, I'm thinking, my gosh, this is only 23 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it is, boy, it seems like a grittier world. It seems, there's just so many things about it. Tell us a little bit about your decision to set the book in this particular point in time.
Well, when I originally started writing it, there was COVID and all this stuff, and I really didn't want to get into that, and
Right.
a time frame involving that. And I also didn't want, and things in after I retired, a lot of things changed, with respect to narcotics and what was popular on the street, and um and the whole thing with computer investigations and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to stay with a time I knew well, and also I like the idea of time before everyone thought the world was going to shut down with Y2K.
Right.
And that whole thing, and especially the police, we really we were thinking the worst, that it's going to be like like
Anarchy in the streets.
looting and anarchy and everything. And so I just like, and something about 1999, I don't know, maybe Prince, I don't know. But you have to excuse me, I'm drinking a Coca-Cola and it's like making me belch. But yeah, I like 1999. Oddly enough, the second girl was originally 1999, and my editor Josh Kendall said, "Does it have to be in 1999?" And this was way before COVID because it came out in 2016.
Right.
I said, "No, it doesn't," and so I ended up having to change a lot. And so I've always liked 1999 for some weird reason.
Yeah. Well, there's so many things to get into. It seems in many ways like the book is a love letter to cops in a lot of ways. There's a lot of real, and sort of we'll get into that. But there's the relationship between the politics that was going on at the time, and the department, and you write interestingly about that, and you get a sense that there were some cops who kind of chose rank over, maybe over dedication to the job, or that was the priority. And then you had kind of working stiffs like your protagonist in the book, Alex Bloom, who's a homicide detective. And we read about him, and he's just like struggling with this massive caseload, and he's just nose to the grindstone. It's a real interesting climate that that you read about within the law enforcement. Would you say that's kind of accurate, or?
Yeah, there are a lot. I've worked with some incredible officials who like are hard workers, and I mean choosing rank, I mean it is like a calling. What if you want to go rank, or you want to go narcotics and just stay an officer, or become a detective? The route for a detective is officer, investigator, detective, and for rank it's officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, commander, and going on. And but when you're talking about, again, I mentioned is like homicide detectives, they yeah, I mean their caseloads, especially in 1999.
Yeah.
I don't want to get this wrong because my buddies will kill me, but I think in 99 DC was the murder capital, but I'm not sure. And that's a terrible term, but it was true. There were a lot of murders, but even if it wasn't, there was so many murders. It's like, keeping up that caseload is phenomenal. And there's, you know, I mean, there were rotating shifts. I mean, I can go on. It's just like, it's grueling.
Right. Now, Alexander Bloom. Um, Tell me a little bit about him. How long had he been in the back of your mind back when you were doing the Frank Marr books as well? Was he kind of waiting in the wings in your imagination, or is he somebody who came later?
He came later.
Yeah.
And he came about more, when my mother, who's an Ashkenazi Jew, and I just wanted to have this Jewish character. She passed away from ovarian cancer, but and she was suffering dementia. So I really wanted to bring something like that in. So it started with that, and then it sort of builded with the character, and it's Blum.
Is it
But a
Blum?
lot of people get it wrong.
That's
And
right.
I think even in
You
the book,
actually, yeah, you established that in the book too.
yeah.
I
But no, I mean
forgot.
it's easy to get wrong. But
Blum.
yeah, like the horror thing, Blumhouse, that make all the is it
Yeah.
there is it Blumhouse? Yeah, make some good films. But yeah, sort of came like that, and then like as we've been like we've been talking, I think years ago, is like a lot of the books I write begin with a playlist, and so it really didn't even take form until I had the idea for Alexander, and I think the mother was going to play a much bigger role than she does now, because it's just a little too much. But I developed a playlist, and then it came up with the story idea. And well, I didn't really come up with a story. I write by the seat of my pants. So the story, ended up writing itself.
And Sweet Thing, the Van Morrison song
The
that
Water
was
Boys too.
that the Waterboys covered. And I think we established that we were both at the Waterboys concert at
The
the
Wiltern.
Wiltern Theater
Yeah.
for Fisherman's Blues tour.
Blues. Yeah.
Wow, what
I
a
know. Isn't
great
that weird?
what a great point in time to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're still, Mike Scott is still pretty active.
yeah, yeah. I think he actually wrote a memoir. I don't know if you ever.
Oh, I
I haven't
didn't.
read it, but I'd like to pick that up.
Yeah, I would too.
So what was it about Sweet Thing that sort of inspired you?
Just not so much the lyrics, but the tone of it. And,
Mhm.
just the way, Van Morrison, and actually, the thing about the Waterboys, their cover of it is they really stayed true to Van Morrison in the song. They didn't try to do their own version of it. They stayed true to Van Morrison almost to the T, except it's Mike Scott singing. And the way they sang Sweet Thing, and then repeated it and repeated it. It's just, there's something there that was just really beautiful, but then, you know, sort of femme felt fatalish about it, but that's not what the song is about. But in my head, it's what it became.
Yeah. Well, it strikes me that the book, I kind of read it, Sweet Thing. it's an intoxicant. You could look at it that way. And we have this wonderful character in the book, Celeste, who is, this wow. I mean, she's the classic sort of tragic, vulnerable, um, fragile, junkie chic, just irresistible,
Mhm.
to a certain type of guy, and Blum. Talk a little bit about Celeste and where she comes from. There's got to be a personal connection there somewhere,
Um,
or maybe not.
no, there maybe is, but not like me falling like Alexander did, or even like getting close. But as far as like the personality, there was this when I was in plain clothes at the third district in Washington, D.C., there was this prostitute um, who was a heroin addict um, who would frequent the 14th and U area. And despite the pock marks and the rotting teeth and all, there was something, and Celeste doesn't have any of that, but there was something really not only tragic about her, but beautiful at the same time, and strong. I mean, weak, obviously, to be addicted to heroin, but there was just something that, you want to help her, and I did try to help her. And to this day, I don't know whatever happened to her. But I'd never give money or anything like that because I knew where the money would go. But food and stuff like that, and you know, and her name was Celeste. So that's where she came from. But um, that's really, but she was from the street, lived on the street. This Celeste does not.
Would there be any way to track her down? Or do you think she's
Oh,
probably
I'm
dead,
sure, but I'm sure she's not alive.
probably dead?
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe not. Maybe she cleaned up. I have no idea. That'd be wonderful if she cleaned up. But
Wouldn't that be great?
I mean, when I last saw her, I was, she was bad off. So I don't know. But
Right.
it's sad. It's really sad.
So, I mean, let's just kind of talk a little bit about the basic plot. And there is a classic noir element in this book. Um, so Alex and his partner Kelly Ryan, who's also a really interesting character that I'd like to ask you more about. They show up at a crime scene, and uh, while they're looking around, he comes across a Polaroid. Alex does, that is a picture of you know the deceased guy with hanging out with his former confidential informant, right? And in classic noir, that's the opening step. He makes a decision, which is he pockets it. He doesn't show his partner right away. Um, and really, that's the first step in the kind of the cycle starts moving.
Bad decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's starting to go. And it's just a classic setup in a lot of ways. Um, some of these little details about, finding Polaroids and things like that, are those taken from real life?
Oh, I never pocket evidence,
Well,
but
not that you would pocket
yeah, no,
evidence.
I mean, but yeah, there, again in 1999, that's what I liked about it too, is, I mean, or in the 90s, what do you mean, like finding evidence like Polaroids and,
Just details like that. Yeah.
oh yeah, photographs were important, in homicide investigations, robbery investigations, when you're doing, you know, when you're on the scene of a homicide, those are very important. You don't necessarily take every photograph, but um, you know, everything is might mean, a lot of, photographs might mean something, their connections and stuff like that. But if you're doing a search warrant, related to a homicide or robberies, or meaning like armed robberies or any kind of robberies, and you find Polaroids or photographs with the suspect and other people, you want to,
Establish who these other people
yeah, who the
are
other people are, and
who
stuff
they're
like
close
that,
to.
because
Yeah. What tell us why don't you tell us a little bit about the basic story, and then we can get into it a little bit deeper.
ah, um, well, you started it well. I mean, just with a homicide thing, and then him pocketing that Polaroid, and then trying to track down Arthur, his confidential informant. And during the course of trying to track him down, he obviously finds Celeste, who lives with his former informant, um, and and things turn from there. He makes a couple of really bad decisions, and then I don't want to give up spoilers, what
Yeah.
happens, but it's really about like just in the academy. There were three things that were grilled into our heads that will get you all the time. And that's sex, drugs, and money. And for Alexander, it wasn't really about sex. It became that, but it was just this odd desire to want to rescue this woman who maybe didn't need rescuing, and then falling from there.
Yeah, he seems like a romantic in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, he's a loner,
Yeah.
never married, really doesn't have a girlfriend, and I mean, takes care of his mom the best he can. I mean, she's in Richmond, which is an hour and a half away from him, so he does what he can. And she's in a nursing home, not a nursing home, but a assisted living home. And you know, so he's pretty much a loner, and his partner, who is more of a wife than a wife could be, is Kelly. Without there's nothing else. It, they're not, like having a relationship or anything like that.
Right.
Um, but he spends the bulk of his time working with her, so they
There's
have a really good relationship.
it seems like there is an intimacy there that's not sexual, but
Mhm.
it's, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about it, which is the kind of the partner relationship
Mhm.
when you're a cop. There's almost a sacred quality about it, because you get the sense that Kelly, Alex, falls hard for Celeste, which is established very early on. So we're not giving away any spoilers there. But throughout the book, you get the sense that Kelly really knows the score.
Yeah.
She knows what's going on. Um, and she really protects her partner in a lot of ways. And there's like a line, you know, is she going to cross the line to protect him? And that's very
Mhm.
interesting dynamic that's played out in the book.
I'm glad you picked that up. Yeah. So I tried to do that. And it is you spend as a cop, you spend oftentimes more time with your partner than you do your spouse. So they basically are it's a marriage, it's like without cheating. I mean, not can't be a marriage. Like it is like a marriage. And I mean, the relationship is just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just, they're a part of your life, and they're a huge part of your life, but you're also working in a job where, that's so demanding, and anything can happen at any time, that your partner's you know, has your back, you know.
Is there that sense of going through shared experience together, on a regular basis, shared kind of life and death situations together, and how you emotionally handle that and support each other and all that stuff?
Is there, I'm sorry, I
I
missed something. I think,
No, I was just saying, is it kind of have to do with going through these
oh
experiences
yeah, without a
together,
doubt.
and there's a
Yeah.
really interesting thing about Alex too that we read is that he early on, when he was a rookie cop, and I thought this was a really key moment in the book, we learn about where he was stabbed at he went to a domestic dispute call, and he didn't wait for backup, and he got stabbed, and he, could have easily died.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Important moment in the book. Um, but yeah, tell me a little bit also about the prose style that you adopted in this, because I found it really interesting. There are parts where it's very clipped, very terse. It almost has this sort of repertorial vibe to it. Was that something that you consciously kind of adopted, or?
No, it never, it's never conscious the way when I write.
Yeah.
It just sort of happens naturally. It's like, again, by the seat of my pants, and just like, um, it's it's how I think, you know,
Mm.
and it just comes out. And also when the character is developed, um, it takes on, a different voice too, obviously, his voice or her voice. And um, so no, that was not intentional at all. But I always, I love short chapters.
Yeah.
For me, I can read long chapters and, other people's work and stuff like that. I love short chapters, and I don't, and the chapter ends naturally too. And sometimes I'm amazed. I go, wow, I just ended it. It's just like, okay, good, that's done. And it's sort of, that's not intentional either. It just sort of happens. I can't explain it. I don't know why they end up always ending it like after 5, 6, 7 pages, but they never really go beyond that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird.
Who are some of your influences as a writer?
Um, there are too many living ones to mention, and I'll always miss somebody, and they're all friends of mine, so I don't want to mention all of them. I go my major influences as a writer, and I've read it so many times, is Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, because that just is everything from courtroom drama to suspense to you know um, social injustice to I mean everything, and mystery, um, and I'm a real fan of like Higgins. In fact, I really had
Mm.
to reread The Friends of Eddie Coyle for my scene that I was going to get into, that was involved surveillance and dial not primarily, almost all dialogue, no action, because you can't, because they were in a car,
Right.
Alexander, and so how do I show action with the undercover cop in the strip joint? And so I reread The Friends of Eddie Coyle, which is primarily dialogue.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, and how he just moves that story in dialogue, just so
Yeah.
that's a huge influence. And then I love G.K. Chesterton, and I'm reading right now. I'm reading David Joy's "Those We Thought We Knew," and
Oh yeah.
I'm blown away.
Yeah. What a writer. What a
Yeah, and I
style.
mean he's on the cover of my book, which is, I've never met him. I don't
Oh, you haven't?
never met him.
Jeez.
Don't know him. and he just, gave me like that blurb, and it's just that when you're a fan of somebody and they do something like that, it just blows you away as an author.
Yeah, no, he's a really major talent.
Oh yeah.
Super nice guy too.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. I hope to meet him someday.
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the strip club that appears in the book. Based on a real place by chance?
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of places. And I have been to once in my career, I was at a strip club there because there was a stabbing. Um, I had never been in a strip club after that. I've never been to one. And then when I knew I was gonna be writing a couple of scenes involving a strip club, I knew I had to go. So I got my backup, this guy who I was believe it or not, was like an agent in internal affairs. So I knew he was, very safe. Well, not so much maybe, but he was safe. Nothing at all happened, but so I did have to do some research and go, and there was a big difference between a strip club in '99 and now. In '99, a lot of them really were had substance abuse problems, the bulk of them. And now, I'm not going to say there are some that don't, because I'm sure there are, but a lot of them are mothers. They go to college, you know, very strong, capable women. And, I remember asking one, I say, why do you choose to do this? Well, I can make a lot of money, and I can go to college, and, it's my body. I can do what I want with it, and, and there's not, I'm not going to say there isn't, because there probably is in certain places. The ones I went to, there really wasn't like prostitution or anything like that, but I'm sure there's a lot of strip clubs where there is.
Right.
So I wanted to like have sort of a club like in more 1999, and I really, obviously I couldn't travel back in time, but so a lot of that was based on the one I went to for the stabbing, and I really was only there for a couple hours, but then I wanted to learn about strippers, so I had to
Yeah.
go.
So it had much more of the desperation addiction element to it. And
Mhm.
that's interesting. And so now it's almost like they have, IRAs and
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh, yeah, they're
retirement
investing, and
plans and
oh my god, yeah, yeah, they're like investors. They like invest and they travel, and they do well. I'm not saying everyone in the '90s were, addicts, and there were probably, I don't know. I never, I didn't like, I don't know, but I'm sure there were very
yeah,
good women that just, that's what they chose to do to, make money.
right, right. Um, and addiction obviously is a big part of Sweet Thing, and it has multiple different facets to it. There's
Mhm.
obviously the addiction to drugs. There's but also addiction to work. It
Mhm.
seems to me. Would you
Yeah.
agree? I mean,
Well, I don't know.
I love that thing in detective fiction, that riff about, the detective doesn't work the case so much as the case works the detective.
Mhm.
Kind of like that sentiment.
That's true. It's like a book. I mean, the book works,
Yeah,
Um, um, but yeah, that's very true. And yeah, I mean, I don't think you choose to be a workaholic as a detective. I think if you had your choice, you wouldn't be, you know. And there are certain aspects of the job that are very addicting, like uh, sometimes the adrenaline, sometimes just the chase, or the mystery, you know. And but I don't think, well, there's a lot of overtime, so I mean that can be appealing to people too. But I don't think that's initially why you do it, is for, for that. And but it really can suck the life out of you,
Yeah, the need to compartmentalize the different worlds, is that a factor?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Do you think that just in general, I realize these are generalities, but do you think that the police culture has, or the climate and law enforcement has changed a lot in these 23 years?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
With the iPhone, everything changed. There've always been bad shootings, and it's terrible to say good shooting, but I'm talking about, when I say good shooting, it's a justified shooting. So justified's a better word, not good. Um, but the iPhone changed everything, that when they started capturing things. And the thing is when it's a justified shooting, you really, even when you capture that on an iPhone and there's an outrage, it's obviously sad when a life is taken. But first of all, you're not in the officer's shoes. And secondly, you don't know what happened that led up to that. Um, I mean, it's obvious if you capture a shooting and you see the um, the bad guy or bad gal pointing a gun, then that's, without a doubt, there's no question. But oftentimes you don't see that. When you first, you just see the end of it, or you don't see what led up to it. So
Right.
so that changed a lot of things. And I can see where it, like, a lot of cops, I don't want to say fear, but might be weary of, like, um, something happening, and then it gets captured like that, and it changes their lives.
Right.
um so you don't really want that to happen,
Of course not.
because if it is justified, still can ruin you in today's climate.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that, I mean, there are bad cops where things are they're just bad shootings all around. And we've seen that. There have been several cops, and and you know law enforcement people, not necessarily like police officers. It could be federal or whatever, that have gone to jail, and deservedly.
In the book, I wanted to ask you, I know I can just sense that a lot of this stuff is personal. Do you remember when cops were issued the Nextel cell phones?
Yes. I like was so thrilled when I got mine, and I was in intelligence section. I got a Nextel. I got a Nextel. Yeah. That's
Because
cool.
I mean, some of the cops are like, ah, shit, this means I'm accessible all the time. They can
Yeah,
reach
that
me.
too. But no, I
You
was
know,
excited, because I was a rookie detective and all that, investigator at that time. And you know, but yeah, no, I can see where that they, like, oh man, now I gotta, like, that happened later. Is like, especially with pagers, you can't turn them off, and they gotta be on.
now when was it that was it during this time? I mean, nowadays it's like every street corner is under cameras. I mean, there are cameras everywhere now. At
Yeah.
this point, not so much, right? I mean, you're starting to see them a little bit in '99. Were they starting to, is that starting to become a
Oh,
thing?
they were around,
They were
especially
around before.
homes,
Yeah.
um, and stuff like that. There was surveillance and personal surveillance, and you know, it really helped when I used to investigate burglaries. That's what I became really good at, is burglary investigations. And because the thing I loved about burglary is those burglars, the ones that were busting into places, um, they had their ear to the curb. They knew everything. They knew who shot such and such at that corner. They knew who was dealing. They knew the crack houses. They knew. where all the obviously where the stolen property was going, which led to other things, which led to organized crime, which led to everything, man. So I loved that. And it was real helpful, obviously, with offices and buildings. They had their surveillance cameras and stuff like that. Not so much on corners, or anything like that. But if there was a major building, um, office building, there was surveillance that would cover, a corner or something like that. But yeah,
Right.
it was around then.
Wow. Do you miss it at all?
Yeah,
Do you?
but aspects of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, would I um want to go? Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I would. I'd go through it again. Not now at my age, but yeah.
What's what are you planning next? What's your next book?
The working title is Hound of Heaven. And I've always been like landscape is always like, I mean, like Washington, DC is as much character as my characters and in my head. And so when I moved upstate to this small town and which where there are 8 police officers and 1 detective and the chief, um surrounded by farmland and bisected by the Erie Canal and stuff, that did something to me. And I'm thinking, man, this would be really cool. And so I had this idea. Obviously, I'm not giving up Washington, D.C., but I'm not going to go back there in this book. But I have a retired homicide detective who was the narrator in City on the Edge,
Oh yeah.
looking back as the kid, and he's retired and has to move upstate because his dad, who retired from the Foreign Service, passed away, and his brother, who was Tommy and City on the Edge, has major PTSD because he was kidnapped in a country as a little boy, and he's agoraphobic, so he has to take care of his brother. And obviously, you have a retired homicide detective from any city that moves to a small town, something bad has to happen. So
Right.
yeah, so then he's friends with the chief in that small town because he would always go there to be with his dad and help his dad out, and got to be friends with him. So when something really bad happens, um a string of very bad things, then they ask for his help and he helps.
Wow, that sounds fantastic.
I love the idea, and the
Yeah.
title is based on The Hound of Heaven, written by Francis Thompson in 1880. It's an epic poem about how you can I don't know if this will come into play, but I just like the title. But how you really can never hide from God. You can go anywhere in the world and and try to hide from him, but he knows where you are. And
Right.
so it's a beautiful epic poem.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I like the idea that, with all of your work, you get the sense that everybody's kind of existing in the same world.
I like that too. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I
That,
appreciate hearing that because yeah, I do, they do revolve. I mean, DC police is, like that, they're way short now. I don't know how many members they have, but they're supposed to have like 5,000 members. But even with that kind of force, it's still very small. And so many people. And throughout, and it stays with you throughout your life. And I like the idea of that in the book too, where
mm,
like Frank Marr and Sweet Thing, and then caring, and Alexander probably would have known Graham Sanderson from City on the Edge. He obviously would know him because he was homicide, but it's not brought up in Sweet Thing because I didn't have the idea for Hound of Heaven when I was writing Sweet Thing, or I would have brought him in there like
right.
an idiot. I didn't, but yeah. So I love that, and thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Um, let's see. Anything else we can discuss here? Um, do you have any will Frank Marr kind of be a player going forward at all, or?
Not in Hound of Heaven, but I really I mean, I get a lot of mail about Frank, and so obviously there, there's people that really like him and want to see him come back, and I'd like to bring him back in something,
Yeah,
where it's a full book with Frank Marr. Yeah.
right. Any TV or movie nibbles?
Right now, A Murder at the End of the World, um, which opens up at Mysterious Bookshop in New York City, and ends up in Iceland. I really like that a lot, and
Yeah,
I really went. I'm going through a Mike Flanagan thing right now, the director, House of Usher and
yeah,
how
yeah.
the Haunting of Hill House, and I think that's what it's called, and all that. And, we've binged all of those.
Yeah, I like the Usher, the Fall of the House.
Yeah, it was
Thought
really
that
good.
really captures
And,
the vibe of Poe. Well,
yeah,
yeah,
he's a real Stephen King fan, and most of his stuff is based on Stephen King work. But he's a real Edgar Allan Poe fan too. I'd
you,
love
are
to
you
meet him one day.
are you aware of that project that Michael Connolly's working on right now with
Mhm.
he as a he bought the rights to a book that came out earlier this year about the death of Edgar Allan Poe and kind of looking at it as a possible homicide. Um,
Mm.
and he's doing a documentary about that, with contemporary cops kind of looking at the evidence.
Oh, that's cool.
Fascinating story.
Where is it gonna stream or air?
I'm not entirely sure yet.
Mm.
I, I don't know, but it seems like was it Netflix who did the Fall of the House of Usher?
Yeah, but he ended up. I don't know if they fell out. I don't think they had a falling out. But his next thing, which is also based on a Stephen King novella, and the life of Flight or something. I don't remember.
Hmm.
That's going to be hit on Amazon Prime.
Okay, cool. Right. Well, David, it's been great talking with you. I'll let you go.
Yeah.
Um, we always get off on these interesting little digressions, which I love.
Especially music.
Yeah, especially music. But everybody check out Sweet Thing. We have signed copies here at the Poison Pen. And I'll be talking with you soon, David.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Have a
And
great
thank
night.
you all for listening.